Good afternoon and welcome to October's Lunch and Learn. I am Nicole Anjum. I am the program assistant for Virginia Family Network, and we are joined this month by Kayla Gear. She is a youth support partner, or is it just youth support?
It's youth support partner. You got it.
So she's going to tell us a little bit about what she does in her role and how she's able to help our kids. This is kind of a newer position, so it's not readily available everywhere, but hopefully it will be. So at least you can get an idea of some supports that are up and coming that are going to help our children in the future, hopefully soon. All right, Kayla, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and take it away.
All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Kayla. So I'm gonna share my screen. I have a presentation. If I can get it to work. Make sure that it works. Okay. I'm a youth support partner. I work in intensive care coordination here in Roanoke, Virginia at Blue Ridge Behavioral Health Care. Before we get started, I just want to say a couple of things. First, all the media and the photos and videos and diagrams and everything, they're not mine, not taking credit for them. And then I did want to say too that there are some topics such as self-harm, trauma, and substance use that could be triggering. So just want to be mindful of that. And then I also want to say that the YST role, because it is new, some locations that it is available at may do or have like different policies and regulations than the one that I'm in. So it may look different kind of depending on what location the person's at. So before we kind of get going into what the YST role is specifically, I started this when I was 18, so I've been here about a year and a half. And before this job, I was actually in the early childhood field, which is a huge, huge difference. So when I started this job, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. But like, what is all of this? And because it's new, I didn't really have, anyone to kind of show me what to be doing. So my agency and I have just kind of been figuring it all out together. And I think everyone else who's in the role kind of is. So when I found this role and this job, initially I was interested in it because a big part of being a YSP is kind of, you share your lived experiences with your mental health and some of the things you've been through. So some of my lived experiences is depression, self-harm, anxiety, PTSD, and exposed to substance use. So I wanted to kind of take all of that and just do something good with it. And that's the biggest part of being a YSP is kind of turning all of that into something good. So we share our lived experiences, and I need to move the thing so I can see what I'm reading. It's to remember that we have that lived experience, and that's kind of what I was just talking about, that is one of the biggest things about being a YSP, because we have lived experience in the mental health and substance use treatment systems. And we kind of share that to build a rapport with the youth and the family. We do it within boundaries. We don't just share, all of our personal information without there being a purpose for it. We are very mindful. I personally got trained on how to share my lived experiences in a way that was appropriate. So I don't know if other agencies do that also, but I did have the opportunity to do that. And so I think that was very helpful. And so if anyone's going to be a YSP, I definitely think that it's worthwhile kind of learning how to share it in a way that is appropriate, isn't triggering for people, and that is positive and not focusing on all the negative aspects of it. Providing your experiences and sharing that just provides hope to the youth and the families in a lot of ways, that you can overcome all of these obstacles that you have faced or you are facing. And so a lot of times when we're sharing our lived experiences, we're also talking about how we overcame them and what positive lessons were learned as a result of having those experiences. So I have a couple of quotes that I want to share just because they are great representation of kind of what peer support in general is. And when we talk about peer support, you have a youth support partner, then you have peer support, and they are along the same lines. A youth support partner works within a specific role, while peer support is a little bit more general. And so this quote kind of just talks about giving that hope. Peers exemplify that recovery is possible, which is a new notion for many who have been led to believe that stability and symptom control is their best future. I don't know who said this, but it's one of my favorites, just because it really brings into light what peer support is. So many people think that just managing your symptoms is all you can do for the rest of your life when things are really hard, and that's not the case. You can do whatever you want to do, even if you have all these things going on. And so I think peer work is really important in that aspect, because we kind of show people that this is not the end all be all. There's more, you can do whatever you want to do. The next quote is another one of my favorites, just because it talks about the connection that a peer support has and how that part is beneficial. Sherry Mead did say this, and she says, peer support is not based on a psychiatric models and diagnostical criteria. It is about understanding another situation empathetically through the shared experience of emotional and psychological pain. When people find affiliation with others, they feel like them, they feel a connection. This connection or affiliation is a deep holistic understanding based on mutual experiences where people are able to be with each other without the constraints of traditional expert and patient relationships. So a lot of times, when you're receiving treatment, typically all you normally have is you have your therapist, your psychologist, your psychiatrist. It's just the professional, and then you're the patient. And sometimes that can get a little difficult, because when you're receiving treatment, I know from my personal experience that when you're receiving treatment, it doesn't do a whole lot when you don't feel like they understand. And so that's kind of where the peer support comes in, because peers can say, I do understand, I have been here, here's why. Or they can kind of show the professional the different perspective that maybe the youth has a hard time showing them. So with a youth support partner, again, it's specific to a model versus peer support is kind of more general. Peer supports can be kind of used in hospitals or jails or all kinds of other places that are not just focused on youth, but they're also focused on a lot of other people and that kind of thing too. So high fidelity wraparound is the model that the YSP, is used in. So some of the principles of that are community-based, team-based, outcomes-based, family voice and choice. You have natural supports. There's a lot of collaboration. There's unconditional care. There's it's all strength-based. So we really focus on celebrations and positivity and the strengths and the resiliency of the family. It's individualized. So we don't say this plan is going to work for everybody. Every team has a different plan for every need or concern that there is. And there's also cultural competence. So we're very aware and we try to be very mindful of people's different cultures and kind of where they came from. So we create plans that are individualized and unique to the family and the youth. And we focus on the strengths and resiliency. We talk about celebrations. It's kind of how we start every meeting. What things are going good, what things are happening that are really positive. We rely on people who support the family, and we build self-efficacy. So we talk about a lot of natural supports, which I'll talk a little bit about later too. It is a team-based practice. So another thing I'm going to talk about later is kind of who's involved in our wraparound meeting, who's involved in that team. It is very, very team-based. So we don't do anything if the youth is not present. We don't do anything if the family is not present. We keep it very collaborative. Families and youth are always involved as much as possible. We also measure outcomes of the planning as we go. So when we start with a family, we do like a discovery, and then, which I don't normally do that. I kind of help with that. But the facilitators, who are the people that run the high fidelity wraparound meetings, kind of take care of most of that stuff. But we have a vision statement. So I kind of help the youth identify their vision statement while the facilitators focus a lot on the families. And that's kind of how we measure our progress is, have you gotten this much of your vision statement done, or where do we need to go to get to it? So we talk about that. And we also talk about ownership of their vision. So this is your vision. This is what you want. This is what we're going to do. We let them, they have a very big responsibility over their own care and service delivery. So we don't just tell them this is what you should be doing. We don't do that. It's very, very collaborative. So what a YSP is specifically, we kind of work with youth to ensure that their voice is heard and that they have a voice in their care. Again, talking about they have responsibility and the obligation and the respect to manage their own care. Again, we're not going to just say this is what you should be doing or this is what we would want you to do. Again, we have a lived experience and we kind of use that to engage the youth and understand their perspective. We encourage the youth to be involved in their care, and we help them follow through on their action steps, which kind of help them get to their vision statement or address a need or concern. And action steps are something that are at the end of every wraparound meeting. So when we talk about wraparound and we have a meeting, it's a very structured meeting. There are celebrations, updates, all kinds of other things too. But when we get to the end, there's action steps, and those are the things that we use to address the concerns. So I kind of help them follow up on theirs if they have one. And the other thing too is if the youth is not in the meeting, we don't provide them with an action step because they weren't there to agree to it. So I also kind of help our YSPs in general, just kind of help ensure that the high fidelity wraparound team, so the professionals and the family, understand the youth and that the youth understand the team's perspective as much as possible. And again, helping identify the vision statement, looking at celebrations and assisting them with identifying natural supports. And I have a video too, so hopefully that'll work, where, I don't know if I hit the sound button though, so I'm gonna have to see. So Nicole, if you can't hear it, just let me know. But this video pretty much just kind of talks about what a YSP does in the perspective of the youth. Can you? Can you hear it? You're muted.
I don't hear anything, but I also don't see anything.
Okay, so 1 second. I might have to redo the share screen. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Really to edit.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I have a lot going on. I work with a lot of professional people on my team. My therapist and psychiatrist, my foster care caseworker, and my teachers. They're all okay, but sometimes it feels like something is missing. There have been a lot of school meetings because I can't focus with all the stuff happening in my foster home and with court. I talked to my caseworker about it and she seems to understand, but then she starts talking about hearings and motions, whatever that means. My therapist and I talk about it too, but I can only see her in her office for an hour. It seems like everyone is speaking a foreign language at school meetings too. Like, what is an IEP anyway? Everyone asks me what might work for me, but I don't know and I freeze. I wish there was someone who had been through this before that could help me understand what's going on and help my team understand me better too.
Youth peer support providers use the power of relatability. Just kidding. Peer support providers aren't really superhuman, but they can be super helpful. They can talk with you about their lived experiences. Youth peers may give you some ideas or help you advocate for yourself.
Max and I wrote a list of things to try at school. Having Max's help to understand all of their jargony talk made me feel less nervous at my meeting. Having Max on my team now is pretty cool. He gets it because he's been through some of the same things. Besides meeting with me on his own and coming to my meetings, Max helped me find a youth group of other teenagers who are going through some stuff too. Now I don't feel like I'm the only one.
Max helped Taylor increase his knowledge about services being offered to him, inspired a sense of hope for the future, helped expand his social circle, and supported Taylor's ability to have his voice heard.
Okay. So that is like one of my favorite videos because, and that was shown at some of the trainings I had to do too. And, oh my gosh, of course it went all the way to the top. If it'll work. And I just love that video because it shows you kind of, I mean, fictional, but it shows you from a youth's perspective, kind of how it's helpful. And it's really short and sweet too, which is good. So let's go on to qualifications and training. So again, to be a youth support partner, and it's going to vary from agency to agency, location to location, but in general, our lived experience is the most important one. Of course, if you don't have lived experience, then the role would not really be effective because that's the biggest part of being a YSP is having that lived experience and receiving treatment or being within the system. For my agency and with most other agencies, there's a is an age restriction. I know that there is one. I just don't know what it varies from place to place, but like mine is you have to be 18 and then you don't really stay in the job past a certain age. And I think that age is like mid-20s, because again, you kind of lose that relatability if you are, older, too much older than the youth, because you can't really understand their perspective as well. For us, we also have to get high fidelity wraparound training. So I have to go through, we have to go through, sometimes it's like a 3-day thing. Sometimes it changes, just depends on kind of who's doing it. But it's a few-day training, kind of just learning how to work within the model of high fidelity wraparound, because of course, if you're working in that, you really need to know how to. And then the other thing that I went through is the peer recovery specialist training. It is a 72-hour training, and then there's also a state certification. I have not finished my state certification yet because I'm still working on it. That takes quite a bit of time to get all of your supervision hours and all those things kind of put into it in order to go to this, like take the state test. And that's not necessarily a requirement, but it is very helpful. And it's being worked on now so that it is more YSP friendly for youth, because a lot of it talks about adults, because again, with the peer recovery, it's more broad. It's used a little bit differently. And some of the agency trainings, of course, they're going to vary. I've had a lot of them, but some of the biggest ones that I've found to be most helpful are the CPR and first aid. That's a requirement for all of the staff at our agency. And so, of course, I've taken that one. And then there's the mental health first aid, which is really important too. When some of the youth are having a problem or they're having a difficulty, then we can kind of use that to help them. And then, of course, there's the trauma-informed trainings too. There's a bunch of other ones, but those are just the 3 biggest ones. So when we talk about the responsibilities of a YSP, so kind of what the specifics of the role look like on like a daily basis or like weekly basis or however often the person is working, we role model positive behavior. We ensure that the youth's voice and choice is there. We gather information from the youth to kind of ensure that their voice is heard. We support improved self-confidence, help others working with youth better understand their perspective, and provide reminders of it at times. Sometimes it's hard for the team members, especially if there's a new team member involved, for us to remember what the youth's opinion is on some things. And so a lot of times, like, a YSP has to give a reminder to the team, like, hey, like they don't really like this, or they prefer it this way, or, whatever the situation is. And then we also use our personal story to build trusting relationships with youth, but we also use that to build it with the family. There's been several instances where, especially because of your age, when you're younger starting out, sometimes it's hard for families to kind of be open to a YSP, because it's like, well, you're 18 or you're 19, you're still a teenager. You don't really know like what you're talking about. And that's not to be misunderstood. So I get it. Like, it's understandable. You have somebody, a professional working with your kid who doesn't have any education really and is essentially the same age, and so it gets a little concerning for some parents. And so when it comes to sharing our personal story, a lot of times that helps kind of. Can you hear that? One second. What in the world? Were you able to hear that, Nicole?
I was.
That was weird. I think that was YouTube. It was like started to play again. Just let me close it so it doesn't happen. This is random. Okay, if I can get back to it. Where was I at? Okay, so when we're talking about our personal story and kind of sharing it, it can help break that barrier with the family too, because the family can then kind of understand your perspective too. And then of course, completing the action steps that the youth have. And I don't know why the bullets went from blue to black, but so when we talk about kind of what it looks like for the youth who are receiving a YSP, me personally, I usually meet with them as frequently as the youth wants. And sometimes that changes because sometimes youth need a little bit more time to kind of build that rapport with you. And so I really try to leave it up to them. Sometimes I kind of have to be a little pushy and be like, I know you don't really like this right now, but I promise you, if we can just meet for like an hour, we can work on it. We can try to adjust it. Or Sometimes it looks like where some youth really love the YSP role for meeting every week or twice a week or whatever, and other kids kind of just want it to be there to check in with them. So some of the kids that aren't really open to like wanting to meet all the time, I will just kind of check in with them prior to meetings or prior to court hearings or prior to wraparound meetings so that their voice can still be heard, but it's not annoying to them for somebody to be checking in with them. So when I do meet with the youth, it looks kind of like working on goals or going out into the community, which I don't do very often just because of COVID and everything. But when we are working on goals or action steps, or just kind of building that rapport, which is a consistent thing you have to do with youth, it's just constantly building that rapport with them. So I can help them, YSPs can help them find resources and identify natural supports. Sometimes we'll do like mapping activities, which is something that we can use to identify the natural supports in an easy way, because sometimes it's kind of hard as a youth or even as an adult to kind of figure out who are my natural supports, what do they look like, and that kind of thing. We prepare them for wraparound meetings, and all kinds of other meetings, support hearings, IEP meetings, all that stuff. I check in before and after wraparound meetings to ensure that the voice of the youth is heard and that they're able to address the concerns or ask questions, in addition to following up with action steps. So if I have a wraparound meeting coming up on Friday for one youth, usually the day before or a couple days before, and then again right before, I'll check in with the youth and say, we have a wraparound meeting coming up. Just wanted to remind you, is there anything that you feel like currently we need to talk about beforehand? Do you feel comfortable voicing this in the wraparound meeting? If not, how can we make it where you feel comfortable doing that? Do you mind if I voice it for you until we can kind of get you to a place where you feel comfortable doing it? And then the same thing following after a wraparound meeting, I'll say, how did you feel about it? Is there something on the plan that you didn't like or something that you do like? Was this helpful? Did this new thing we tried help you feel more comfortable? That kind of thing. The other thing is that when we have a wraparound meeting, there's always a wraparound summary. And the wraparound summary is basically literally a summary of the wraparound meeting, and it has each section of the meeting put on there what we talked about. It has a list of the celebrations, list of the updates, list of the concerns and needs, list of the action steps. And sometimes the youth can't be part of the wraparound meeting just because of school or other obligations. And so we always try to schedule them, of course, during a time that the youth is able to be there. But if not, I always meet with them following. YSPs always meet with them to make sure that they understand what was talked about and that kind of thing. The other thing is that if a youth is not present, we're not going to plan for them. We're not going to plan for them to do something if they're not there to agree to it. So if a youth is not there, we may not have as many things completed because they weren't there to kind of help with the planning. But we will always make sure they're kept in the loop of things. And I usually try to meet with them afterwards too, to say, this is what we talked about. Is this something you want to change? And then we can kind of adjust it. We also talk about their vision a lot. And I also try my best to provide a lot of opportunities to them for them to change it or adjust something. In general, a family or youth could be an ICC or Hathili wraparound for about a year. And so when we talk about your vision statement, we talk about that at the very beginning of when the process starts. And so, of course, 6 months in, your vision may change, your goals may change, what you want may change, or what the needs that were there may not be there anymore, so we need to adjust them. Or they just become irrelevant needs. So then we have to kind of look at other things. So when I do like the vision statement with the youth, every week or every so often, I will try to review with the youth. Do you remember your vision statement? What is it? Does this still feel accurate to you? The other thing with the vision statement is that it's written as an I statement. So when we have the youth read it, they're reading it as if it's already happening, so that they kind of get used to that mindset of, I'm already doing these things, so I'm capable of doing them. Accompanying them to other meetings, court, IEP, kind of already talked about that. If the youth is not present in wraparound meetings, specifically court hearings like that kind of have to be there. But for wraparound meetings, if the youth does not feel comfortable voicing their opinion or they're not present, we're there to kind of represent the youth in a way that is appropriate and still allows the youth to maintain their independence and that kind of thing. And we only do that if the youth wants us to, or if they really are just not at a place at the moment to do it for themselves. And then the other thing is that a YSP communicates frequently with the facilitator, just kind of regarding services and kind of what's going on, I do tell all the youth I work with, this is all confidential. I will only share what I say I'm going to share with the facilitator, or things that I feel like are important. And if I feel like it's something that's really important or like detrimental to like the treatment, then I'll say, do you mind if I share this? And if they say no, then we kind of talk about a way where like, I can share it, but in a way that the youth feels comfortable. And so I try to work with the youth in a way that we can address things that are important that they may tell me that they're still comfortable and we're not breaking that rapport with them. So we talk about wraparound, who's involved. You have the intensive care coordinator, which is also the facilitator. What they do is they kind of coordinate with the whole team, so the whole wraparound team, and they will listen to the family to understand the unique strengths and needs. They lead the family and team throughout the whole process, and they ensure the plan is followed as agreed on by the team. So when an ICC coordinator or facilitator is involved, it may look like they're checking in with the family. They may be coordinating with placements and wherever the youth and the family is located to kind of make sure that everything's going as planned. They follow up on action steps, they gather resources, that kind of thing. And the best way to kind of describe like a YSP role versus an ICC role is that the facilitator focuses on the whole team while the YSP focuses on the youth. And the facilitator, of course, focuses on the youth too, but it's kind of more broad in that the overall bigger picture of things and the whole team as a whole, versus like my main focus is going to be the youth and making sure that their voice is heard and that they're involved and that kind of thing. Other service providers, professionals working with the youth and family, that could be therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, it could be tutors, it could be IEP teams, natural supports, DSS, whoever's working with them. And then when we talk about natural supports, it's going to be friends, relatives, and mentors. It could be teachers that the youth is pretty close to, or like a coach, or anybody that the youth or the family identify as being a good support for them. That's not a paid provider, pretty much. So a summary and common questions thing, and I put this because a lot of times when we're talking about all of this, there's a lot of information. So just to kind of sum up everything, the role of a YSP is to solely work with the youth, so they have a voice in all forums. So again, that can look like in court, IEP meetings, wraparound meetings, in all capacities that the YSP is capable of doing that in. Credentials, again, process of trauma, residential settings, foster care, mental health services, social services, or the court system, are all of the places that we have a lived experience from to some degree. And so we kind of use that to provide hope for the youth. And so that's our biggest credential. And I always make sure to put that, because sometimes for families, that's kind of hard, to understand that that's kind of where we're coming from. And so that is the biggest credential of a YSP, is we don't have this formal and this education. And sometimes we do, but most of it is just kind of coming from where we've been, what we're going through, that kind of thing. And when we're with the youth, to sum up everything that I kind of just went over as like the responsibilities and everything, a lot of times it looks like doing activities to build rapport. So it could look like painting, or we're going to go, like, I'm going to take them lunch, or, whatever it's going to be. It's going to be something to build that rapport, but it also it continues to build that trust and that relationship with them in a way that they feel comfortable. So we work to complete action steps. We discuss topics that are important to the youth. So sometimes I may sit there and talk about something I know nothing about with a kid for 30 minutes. But the point of that is so that they understand, like, I'm here, I will listen. Don't really understand it, but I'll listen, because if it's like a video game or something, I'm like, I have no idea what that is, but I will listen, because this is how I'm going to build that relationship with you, so that you can trust me. It looks different for everybody. It's just kind of what YSPs are willing to do to build that connection with the youth. And we also discuss what they want represented in meetings or team discussions. Something that I started doing recently was, with COVID, it gets a little tricky, but for the most part, I'm still doing all of my stuff in person, quarantining right now, but most of the time it's always in person. And like when we meet with a kid at like an apartment complex or somewhere there's going to be other people. And sometimes we have kids that are kind of young, 9, 10, around that age. And so when it comes to those kiddos that want to go outside, or even, I mean, most of the teenagers, some of them will go outside, but not all of them. And so when it comes to being outside or out in the community in general, who does the youth want to say you are to them? And how do they want you to handle that? Because confidentiality, privacy, respect. So a lot of times I have that discussion with the youth when I start working with them of like, hey, if we see somebody outside and they ask you about me, who do you want to say I am? You can say whatever you want, but we need to figure that out so that when we come to that situation, it's not awkward. Try not to look like a provider, going outdoors with them or out in the community. Again, confidentiality. So that's something else too, is we discuss a lot about what they want the meetings to look like, how they want to address certain things. I always kind of go over the specifics with them. We'll talk about like, if we're in a meeting, is this helpful? Is this not helpful? So we just kind of go through all of that and talk about meetings and just things in general that are important when it comes to preparing for situations before they happen. And then I have some links here of places where you can find more information on a youth support partner. A couple of them just kind of have general information. Other of them have like different resources. I think System of Care I'm pretty sure where that video that I showed earlier is from. And they also have someone like Family Support Partners and High Fidelity Wraparound in general. A family support partner is essentially the same as a youth support partner, except they work with the parents and they have lived experience in their own children or dealing with school systems and that kind of thing, or it could be all of the above, mental health, substance use, all of that stuff, but they focus on the parents and the family or the guardians, while YSPs focus on the youth. So roles are really similar, just a little bit of a different focus, and they essentially do the same things as a youth support partner. And that one, and a family support partner also works within High Fidelity Wraparound too. And that's it.
Thank you for sharing with us. There was a lot of great information. We've done a lunch and learn way back about family support partners and systems of care and kind of what we did. And as family support partners, it was, it's easier to connect with the parents because I'm a parent, they're a parent, we get each other. Mm-hmm. And the struggle always was, but how do we get our youth to be more engaged? So the fact that your role has come about is great to be able to pull them in, and then they can start seeing the benefit of it. Mm-hmm. And then being able to talk about family voice, and we know that System of Care is very active about wanting to make sure that family voice and choice is very, front of the line, that it's their meeting, they run it, we're just kind of there to support them. And I think this is a great video or a great presentation that is going to be around for a while, because in November is Family Caregiver Month, where NAMI and Virginia Family Network spend a lot of time talking about parent voice and choice and the importance of that. So this was a great segue into next month, and to always know that that's what we're working on. Nobody knows their kid better than the parents, and no one knows what's better in a youth's head than the youth. So it's great that your position has come out to be able to help pull those things out, because sometimes it's a secret.
Yeah, I definitely wish that I had my own youth support partner when I was going through everything that I was. There's definitely not enough of us yet, but it is being worked on. I think I'm the only one in Southwest Virginia. So we're kind of working on, I think there's a couple up in like the Northern Virginia area, and there's a couple like kind of sporadically everywhere, but we're definitely working on getting it. It seems like it's been pretty beneficial. So I'm hoping that we'll keep plugging along here so we can have more and that it's more available, because I think it's definitely helpful. Like I said, I really wish I had a youth support partner when I needed one, because I think it would have been helpful, or even just peer support in general, but especially a youth support partner, because they really get to focus on the planning process. So I appreciate the opportunity to share all of that.
So I want to thank you again for sharing all this information and letting us know about your wonderful position and how much you're helping the youth of our families. And if anyone has any other questions that we didn't answer, please put them in the comments below. And Kayla or myself or someone will be sure to get some kind of response to you so we can help answer any questions you have. Thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your week.